Hi, welcome to the World Beyond Belief. My name is Paul Marco, and I brought you to one of the most beautiful places I know about, up here on top of the mountain. Every when I come here, I look across this mountain and I see this beautiful view, and I can't help but think how wonderful it would be just to, fly across there. And I'm not thinking of a hang glider. I'm thinking of a levitation device, anti-gravity. Wouldn't it be great? Now you know that the controllers have had anti-gravity for a long, long time. Oh, by the way, flat earthers, when I say anti-gravity, just translate it into anti-density and anti-weight, because, anti-gravity is the vernacular right now and we have to conform a little bit. But they've had that technology for a long time. And my question to you is, how long have they had that technology? Okay, here are some options to choose from. Was it 1975? Was it 1930? Was it 1890? Or was it 1860? Well, if you answered 1860, you were correct. That was the year that a man named John Ernst Worrell Keely demonstrated an anti-gravity flying craft to the American government. He attached the machine to a bathtub and placed a simple kitchen chair on the tub. He then mounted the craft and cruised around at a high speed. The chair, incidentally, was not attached because the energy field created inside the craft held him securely inside. After the flight, the government and the military said that they could find no practical purpose for such a device. Now, this is 5 years before the Civil War. But you can believe that the satanic elite didn't have the same idea. They didn't think that this device was useless. They hid the technology away for their eyes only. Yes, John Keely was a genius, but really the technology was really simple 1860 type technology. It was pretty basic. Involves gyros. Notice the simple concepts and how avidly this technology is suppressed when watching these next two clips.
The whole machine is designed to spin round like a top. When this happens, the gyroscopes want to fly off the end of their axles because they are being subjected to what is called centrifugal force. With the gyros themselves being driven at a very high speed in a certain direction, they react to the centrifugal force by swiveling upwards and taking the machine with them. Because of its design, it is only able to rise 2 inches off the bench, but the machine is capable of climbing to any height you want.
So, this simple physics experiment, and by the way, if you look carefully in physics textbooks, all experiments with gyroscopes have been quietly removed. A recent Scientific American booklet on rotation, and I love their incredible experiments they do for small children, so that they will learn physics at an early age. I love this magazine. There was nothing, very little about rotation. Very little. They have quietly expurged all these dangerous things. Imagine all the high school kids doing science projects on rotation and then arriving at flying contraptions that are so easy to build. This is exactly what Sandy Kidd did. He has 2 baby gyros here, spinning along the vertical shaft as a part of a big mother gyro, which helps them lift vertically. Sandy had 2 baby gyros, but we can have 3, 4, or n. Doesn't matter, the more the better. So all the baby gyros spin like this. The mother gyro spins along a vertical axis. And we have a lot more efficient drive because here we have spinning along 2 axes. If it's only the mother gyro, it spins along 1 axis. So it's a 1 degree of spinning. Here it's 1 axis here and another axis here. So this is a 2 degrees of spinning. We may even have 3 degrees of spinning if we introduce 1 more direction of spinning, that would be the most efficient drive. The more spinning there is, I don't know why, but the more efficient this drive becomes. Actually, we will come to the idea here. And this is an artist's impression of how such a flying saucer would look like. This is the mother gyro spinning along the periphery. The many baby gyros. The only thing that they added for direction control are these gimbals that would allow the baby gyros to be directed in any necessary desired direction of flight. The mother gyro lifts the craft off the ground and keeps it from falling. The baby gyros allow the craft to travel into, if they are directed in this way, to fly this way, if they are directed into that way. And here we have an engineering drawing how this can be made as a spinning electric motor. These are the stator coils here. This is the electric motor. These are the baby gyros inside. Not only that, but the author claims, this is Otis Carr's anti-gravity vehicle, he claims that this is a free energy drive. All such designs, immediately after they are patented, if they can ever get past the patent office, are secretly taken and financed by the Illuminati until they can see what they can squeeze out of them. Some of them are unworkable. Most of them end up brilliant working devices. And this is how they have amassed and hoarded this incredible technology that they have in their disposal.
Well, I investigated Otis T. Carr myself, and when I found out it was about 1958, you were able to read in newspapers about him test flying his flying saucers, because when I was 18, I remember reading the articles. And then by 1960, his whole factory had disappeared.
Yeah.
He had a factory in Maryland and another one in Hesperia, California.
Factory in Maryland?
Yeah, he had two of them.
I have a case where some strange, there was a comment here that Otis T. Carr had a whole factory for anti-gravity craft in the 60s. In the 50s, he was testing flying saucers in Maryland and somewhere else. I would love to talk about this because I've also discovered some very strange things about him. He probably went black. He probably...
He got brought off. I know a guy who knows exactly what happened to him. They took him to Australia, and he's working on a secret base in Australia.
In Pine Gap, in the Pine Gap facility.
Yes.
All the Australians are taken to the United States and work on the same projects. You just remove them from where everybody knows him. And the most hard evidence came unexpectedly from no other source but the Physical Review letters. Did you get it very big on the screen? Yeah. I want this the biggest possible letters. The Physical Review letters is one of the top, best, and respected academic physics journals around the world. Hayasaka and Takeuchi, two Japanese scholars, in December 18, 1989, had the audacity to publish a paper about an anomalous weight reduction on the gyroscope's right rotation around, again, the vertical axis on the Earth. How could they dare publish such an article? They had a standard issue aviation gyroscope suspended in a vacuum flask to eliminate any aerodynamic lift effects, suspended and balanced on a laboratory scale, micro scale. All of it was in again an insulated box. Later on they did the experiment in a magnetically insulated room that they borrowed from one of the electronics companies there. And they just feed electricity to the gyro and the gyro spins. And what they discovered was astonishing, that the higher the RPMs, from 3,000 to 13,000, the bigger the weight loss of the gyro. And here they use two types of gyros with two different masses. One is 175 grams, the other is 139 grams or something. And for right rotation, the mass decreases. For left rotation, nothing happens. The weight loss is small. The weight loss is milligrams. So we are talking between 2 and 10 milligrams. But because this is a very precision scale, for that scale to discover several milligrams missing, it's like for a normal scale to discover several pounds missing of an object that weighs 100 pounds. So, what to do? I mean, the experiment caused a sensation. A lot of world articles wrote about it. Less than a month it was debunked by two authors from Colorado working on an Air Force grant. How were they able, around Christmas time and New Year, to build quite a complicated plexiglass spinning top powered by an air turbine, to machine it, to draw the drawings, machine it in the shop, assemble it together, to do the experiments over and over and over again, to write the paper, to go through the peer review, to take it to the press and to publish it 29 days later. This is impossible. They have been given the green light by the whole government establishment to debunk the paper, and their article was titled "Anomalous Reduction with a No Weight Loss Experiment with a No Result." They made sure that even in the title, it would become obvious to the biggest dimwit that this is a hoax, that this cannot be. And effectively all research died down. By the time others had the time to create similar experiments, these came with a refutation, and I don't know of anybody else that repeated this experiment, unless they do it in private.
Now this is regular human technology. There's no magic or demons involved. It's suppressed, of course, but it's using mankind's inventive nature. You know, actually, the ability to levitate is found in nature, although you probably haven't heard of it. Again, this is suppressed technology for many reasons.
It's a man named Grebennikov from Russia. Grebennikov was kind of a non-conventional scientist. He was an entomologist, did a lot of work with bugs, entomology. And his favorite thing was to go out into the steppes of Russia and into the various outer hinterlands and camp out in the summers and study his favorite subject. And on one of these expeditions, he started seeing some weird effects. This is all explained in great detail on the AchilleNet site if you type in Grebennikov and his flying box or gravity platform. But anyhow, the result of this was to show that he found a certain bug that didn't fly, it levitated. And this was, he'd put this bug into a little vial or something, and he saw this vial jumping up off the lab table, jumping up and down. And of course this is patently impossible based on any type of normal physics. So he got into this, and he found out that the bug wings themselves were creating an anti-gravity phenomena under certain conditions. And of course what we have here, if you analyze, I think I found the bug. It's actually a beetle. And if you analyze this bug structure, you see a hexagonal pyramid structure array throughout the entire bottom wing of this bug. Turns out that beetles have two wings. The top wing is called a wing cover, and what the beetle does is it lifts this wing cover up, and then it flips out its lower wings, or inner wings. Now the bug cover protects the inner wings, but when it gets excited or something, it flips these other wings out, and it flaps these other wings, and the inner wings flap a little, and this beetle goes gyrating around. They can't fly very good, but they sure levitate great, I guess. And anyway, he took a whole bunch of these bug wings, and he glued them to like a Venetia blind structure, and he put it into a little platform he built. So they were all, these bug wings were all covered in here. And he used I theorize he used the wing covers as well as the inner wing itself. There's also a kind of a handlebar on this thing with some controls. You can see the thing a little better here in detail. the controls, I think, had to be manipulated continuously and probably vibrated to create the same action that the bug was doing. There was also down at the base some kind of a lever, which I suspect controlled the amount of lift he was getting out of this thing. Anyway, Grebennikov claimed that he could fly this thing or levitate it, and it would go around at almost 1,000 miles an hour. Now you ask, how can that happen? You know, well, he said that there was an energy field that built up around this thing due to this gravity field building up in the platform, and by this thing building up, it built out a force field that basically surrounded him and protected him from the local environment. So even though he was flying at 1,000 miles an hour, you could go, you know, you could be wearing your Sunday best suit and not get it flutter a bit at 1,000 miles an hour. I'm not sure I'd want to stand on something going 1,000 miles an hour that's 2 feet square. But this picture here shows him sitting on the ground, and these pictures are much better if you get on the KeelyNet site. This is the platform with him on it about 3 to 6 feet above the ground, because here's the shadow here down below. Now you could say this is all faked, but if you get into the other things that he did with shape, they almost mirror the stuff that I discovered, and it proves, I guess, that there's either two crazy people in the world, or there's two people that have found the same discoveries. So I think that this is a valid phenomenon, and I'll show you why. Next slide is a micrograph that I took of a beetle inner wing. This is at 100x. If you look closely at this thing, you can see rows of bumps all along the bottom of this wing, each row is staggered from the next row next to it, and this is all over the surface of the bottom of the wing. Now, I don't know of any aerodynamic surface that has bumps all over the bottom to help it fly better. If you blow this up to 430x, you can start to see some of this microstructure of the cells that form where these bumps are. The next slide, at 970x, you start to see what these bumps that stick up are. They're hairs, look like hairs or fibers that grow out of the center of these hexagonal cells. And of course, this harkens back to my basic shape power discovery, is that each one of these, because of their shape going down to a point, is creating a magnetic field. And remember, a magnetic field is a rotating piece of vortex in the ether.
So the Bankster pedophile controller started working with anti-gravity probably from at least 1860. So you can imagine how the world would have been different if this technology was allowed to blossom in the world without being suppressed. Well, 1860 was 5 years before the Civil War, and I doubt that the Civil War would have happened with this technology out in the open, but that war was critical for the banksters and the Federalist control. The railroad was only started in 1830, so most people, when they wanted to go west, were using Conestoga wagons still. This was only 84 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence from Britain. The motor car had been invented about 5 years before, but it wasn't viable. It wasn't a viable means of transportation until at least the turn of the century, some 40 years in the future. Slaves were not considered citizens, and this was 60 years before women had the right to vote in the U.S. This invention would have made roads of any type impractical. Travel by air would have been a no-brainer, as this technology would be the basic mode of transportation. Space travel would be a possibility for anybody, of course within the firmament. You could live anywhere and not be limited by transportation or factors like that. In fact, your whole house could have been a teleportation device, a levitation machine. But that didn't happen. We struggled through horse and buggy, crude train, railroad transportation, and the motor car. The control system, in effect, kept us on the troglodyte level. Caveman technology for us, and levitation for them. Used for pure evil, of course. But that scenario with them having anti-gravity and us crawling around in the mud with horse-drawn vehicles does not take into account how real science works. You see, in real science, discoveries are cumulative. In other words, the first invention creates a platform on which subsequent inventions can build. If we take the wheel, we can see an evolution of invention on top of invention, evolving out of the original wheel. People, if they lived in very isolated areas, without the wheel, would be left behind, in the dust, so to speak. So we can assume that this technology was simply a point of departure for the evil planetary controllers. We can assume that this evolution of the basic Keely's bathtub happened, and manifestations of its fruit showed up all over the world in the form of levitating devices, what we have been referring to as UFOs. Many branches of this technology form the basis for black projects in every country controlled by the Satanists. One documented case of the use of the technology in its advanced stages are the noiseless Foo Fighters of World War II. Conventional bombers at that time traveled at maybe 250 miles an hour, and fighter jets maybe 500 miles an hour. While they were seeing these Foo Fighters zip by at over 2,000 miles an hour. No match for conventional aircraft. So superior were these crafts that they didn't need guns. They would shoot beams of energy and knock out the electrical units of the Allied planes. You may ask then why the Germans lost the war if they had this superior technology. Well, at this point in my understanding of what's going on the plane, it's because, well, it wasn't in the script, not part of the plan. My idea is that the war was intended to first of all get the Rothschild Zionists a homeland in Israel, and also to eliminate three cultures that could threaten the Anglo-American hegemony. But I digress. One important piece of the puzzle that hides in the shadows of anti-gravity transport is the fact that creating this type of propulsion interfaces with the time-space continuum. And this is our basis for reality. Here is some information from a man that worked on anti-gravity free energy with Otis Carr. Now, Otis Carr is the man who was left all of Tesla's papers and his experiments upon his death. This may give us some idea of where the Satanists stand in their abilities to harness this technology today. This is development from Tesla through Carr, related to us by a scientist named Ralph Ring.
Enough to be, I was just a technician, and we had many engineers, we had many people. Look, we didn't use credentials. We used our brains, we used our minds, and Carr would explain time after time to all of us, you've got to go beyond the brain, because the brain is a computer that operates the body, and its sole function is a third-dimensional reality, and it doesn't know or want to know anything beyond that. So if you follow your brain, you're going to stay in the same thing forever and ever and ever, and you'll be chasing your tail around and around. You've got to use your mind. You've got to get out of the brain. Just respect it for what it is, because it's running your body. But so what he meant by that was that the things we're going to experience now that he had learned from Tesla and his own experiments was above the physical, conventional techniques of science, as far as we went in the third dimension. And what he called it was ether technology, above and beyond the taught run-of-the-mill physics. And what he meant by that was you had to use your mind to comprehend. You had to get all your doubts and fears out of the way to get to your mind, and then once you got to your mind, you had to still it down and started following nature. And miracles, he said, would happen. And in my testing of that, I found that, sure enough, the more I calmed down and became just still, the more things would come to me. Things I wanted to know for years. Somebody would show up and hand me a whole book. Or if I wanted a hamburger and I was hungry, but I didn't want to leave the lab, somebody would be getting hamburgers and bring them to the workbench. It just phenomenal things would start happening. So he said, okay, we're going to have this experiment. We put this on the workbench, and we fired it up. This was made out of a high polished aluminum. That's all it was aluminum. And you could touch the periphery, you could touch anything on the craft, and it was pretty solid. But as they increased the frequencies, it was similar to the ping pong ball experiment, only this was different. This was in a little slightly different dimension than that. They started increasing the frequencies that this craft was vibrating on. It had so many cycles per second that it was operating on in this dimension. So as you increase that frequency, you start getting into resonance with its surroundings. And I kept touching this thing, and then pretty soon I noticed that it was getting softer and softer. And then pretty soon I put my fingers right through the shell of this craft here, right into the side of it, which blew me out of the water. And Carr says, come on, come on, come on. He knew this, he knew all about it. And he knew this is quite simple to understand, that once you reach a resonant frequency of anything, then you're free of the confines of the environment, of any environment, no matter what it is. And like the bumblebee. So we had one more experiment with a craft similar to this, that this was the next day, I think it was, or close to the next day. And he said, now we're going to go a little further. And so we increased the frequency like a fan blade. You know, the faster it goes, it starts disappearing. It starts getting fuzzier and fuzzier. Well, this thing right before our very eyes started getting fuzzy. And pretty soon, it was gone. Completely gone. And Carr at that moment said, well, I'm not sure it's still here. And it's in another frame of reference. That we may have sent it somewhere. It might show up on somebody's table. So that was my experience, my first experience with what's known as teleportation. And that is very simple as well. Once you understand the mechanics of it, it goes slightly beyond the quantum ideas, the quantum mechanics and quantum theories, because you have to use your mind quite a bit. And when you use your mind, you realize that anything below that is illusion, that we're creating it. And we create it through the brain, if you will, in the third dimension, by these little cameras that are flippering microseconds, milliseconds, and creating all these things that we give names to, lights, chairs, tables, people. And we say, well, no, this is solid. Well, it is. Everything is true. There is nothing but truth. There's nothing in the universe outside of truth. It's how we look at it. Frames of reference. He said, this is what we're going to do with the big craft, and this is what we're going to have to get accomplished pretty fast, because they're onto us. They know we're in Apple Valley, and we've been shooting these little guys around the valley using the techniques that we had. And as they entered the atmosphere, they'd have a corona around the outside of them, a glow. And people in Apple Valley were becoming wondering if these were flying saucers. And we couldn't stop the glow. We didn't know how to do that at that time. So we knew that people were going to, the looky-loos and the curiosity seekers would soon be coming in. And because they didn't understand what we were doing, we knew they were going to slow things down. So we wanted to get a demonstrated model out to the public fast enough so that, and documented enough so that people would know that levitation is quite simple. There's nothing to it. In fact, the analogy that I use is that people can't always relate to is you look up in the sky, a clear blue sky, and you see clouds starting to formulate, and then you see them turning dark, and da-da-da-da-da. They're accumulating moisture right out of the air, just like an air well, and they're bringing hundreds, thousands, millions of tons. Water weighs 8 point something per gallon, 8 pounds per gallon. Millions of tons are suspended right over our heads, and then when nature gives the signal, it rains. But that's how simple levitation is. It's a balance. That's all it is. And when you understand the mechanics of magnetics, It's quite simple to levitate anything. Well, it wasn't 3 weeks later till things started happening. But before they did, he said, let's get this 45-foot craft up and operational, and maybe we can do something with that to show people. And I was elected, just a technician, knows nothing but natural law. I was elected as one of the people to be on board when we operated the craft. And there was 3 of us, and we had a briefing before we went on board, and Carr said, forget about it, your brain is going to go to, you might as well let it go to sleep because it's not going to comprehend what you're going to do. It's not going to have anything to do. It's not going to understand it. And just be patient and stay in a very calm situation and focused on what you're doing, and then when you get back, we'll have a debriefing and explain everything to you. So we did. We got on board. What we had was a giant crystal ball, or glass, or crystal, I believe it was crystal, quartz crystal perhaps, and a light shining up through the bottom of it, which I believe was laser, of some kind of laser, I'm not sure. And as soon as the light turned on, it took this crystal ball and changed it into infinite colors. It just went from infrared to ultraviolet in millions of degrees. I mean, it was just fading all the way around. And Carr said, okay, today we're going to go about 10 miles downrange, and we're going to an area which is the resonant frequency of aquamarine. That's the color. And he said, okay, just stay where you are, open your minds, and relax. And when you get there, I want you to get out and see what's going on. Well, this globe started to change colors, and then it got into the aquamarine color. The whole globe started turning into aquamarine. Very, very brilliant. And lit up the interior of the craft. It was so bright. And then this is vague, but as well as I can remember everything, the next thing I remember, he says, okay, you're there, get up, get out of the craft. And we hadn't experienced any movement at all, and I didn't quite understand what was going on, neither did they, the guys I was with. We said, okay, and we got out of the craft, and we were in a different place. We weren't at the lab, and even as I'm relating this now, I didn't remember this until, I think, years later that I recall it. I'm still recalling some of the things that happened. But we got out, and we were in touch with Carr, and I don't remember if we didn't have cell phones or anything. I don't remember how, but I can still hear Carr's voice right now giving us instructions. And he said, pick up rocks, pick up sticks, put them in your pocket, go run up a hill, do whatever you want to get familiar with where you're at. And we spent about 10, 15 minutes doing that. And he says, okay, get back on board. And we sat down again. And then this was still glowing, this aquamarine. We got back on board, we noticed that it dimmed back and went back into the multicolors. And we heard Carr saying, okay, get out of the craft. And we got out of the craft and we were back where we started, at the lab. He said that we're going to go into debriefing and I'll explain this to you. He said, well, what do you guys think? How was your experience? And I said, it didn't work, did it? And he said, well, that's the brain. So he said, yes, look in your pockets. And I swear to God, it was the most, I can't describe it to you, it's beyond words. We started pulling rocks and sticks out of our pockets. We had no idea where they came from at that moment. And he said, that's where the spaceships are. That's where they are. They're here, everywhere, right now. People can't see them because they're busy in a third-dimensional reality, or they're locked into a busy frequency that has little to do with knowing what they're doing, but has everything to do with guessing of what they're doing. And he explained that as, well, my good friend Donald Ware explained it to me the other night when we had dinner. There are different densities of reality. There's a first, second, third, fourth density. And we live, all of us live, well, we fluctuate, but for the most part, all of us are comfortable in one or the other densities. And these are just frequencies that we prefer. In some cases, they can be called creature comforts. We've gotten used to, a new car every year, a new television, a new house, travel, all the comforts of doing things. A lot of people don't want to go any further than that, and that's fine. That's fine, but there are a lot of people that do. And so what he was explaining was, he was explaining the different dimensions or densities as a box, about living in a box. That you have in a box all the creature comforts you want, but you'll stay in that box for as long as you want. It could be 100 years, 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years if you like. Nobody's putting any pressure on you but yourself. Or you can start probing things that are outside the box, and it's a different reality. And he explained that as the difference of good and bad, right and wrong, left and right, hot and cold. He said those are all dualities, and the dualities belong in the box. That's when you make decisions. Oh, should I do this? No, I better do this. And the top of the box, as high as you can go in that box, is the belief system, where you believe in, let's say, the ultimate science or the ultimate religion. You say, oh, I believe. Well, if you believe in something, you can also be encouraged to disbelieve in something. It vacillates back and forth. And we go through eons of time swinging from left to right or right to wrong or so forth. And Carr said there's only one. There's only one truth. There's only one reality. And that's outside the box. And that reality is knowing, when you know what you're doing, not guessing. No more decisions. And you have to start refusing to accept decisions. Just know in your heart where you're going and what you're doing is the right thing. And you'll be guided. Things will happen to you. And he was right. The rest of my life, I've lived that way, and everything's been wonderful. I've got a wonderful wife, a wonderful life. I couldn't ask for anything more than I have right now.
Pretty amazing information, right? I was blown away by it myself. Don't you wonder why they didn't use this to go to the moon or now to go to Mars? They're still sticking with the old rocket idea, the rocket deception. Well, start thinking about why they did that. If you're a flat earther, you know why they didn't use levitation technology. But if you're a ball earther, it might be something for you to ponder. Now, you might wonder why I thought that was important to make a video right at this time, to tell you what was going on. But I think it's really important because, you know, if you're alive during this time, you have a ringside seat to one of the most incredible shows that's ever happened on the earth. It's going to be horrific. It's going to be the greatest thing. It's going to be the most horrific thing since the Great Flood. And you're going to have a ringside seat. You're going to be able to watch the whole thing. Might see World War III. You might see war between the worlds. You might see the alien invasion. Good chance you'll see the coming of the Antichrist. All these things are going to happen, and they're going to use this technology that you know is human technology, to deceive you and fool you and trick you. They probably, well, we know they have anti-gravity technology. They might have time travel technology. They might have interdimensional technology. And they might be able to materialize and dematerialize out of nothing. So look for that kind of thing to be featured prominently in their deceptions. It's an amazing time. And don't let them deceive you into thinking this is alien technology, or an alien from a distant planet is coming and bringing this stuff and being able to do all this stuff. Because the stuff you just saw, you know, is human technology. As marvelous as it is, it's human technology. Don't forget that. Now, during these times, it's going to be operated by Satanists and demons and people that are mind control slaves and all kind of people that are working for the dark side, but don't be deceived. These are deceptions. Stay centered. Stay centered in the knowledge that you know there's a God and there's an unfolding that's happening. You don't have to have any belief to know that. So, I just wanted to present the information. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. By the way, wait, we've attached a treat to the end of this. God bless you.